Hey guys, what's going on? Bezza here, and welcome back to my F1 2016 preview and prediction series. This is a series where I'll be previewing and giving my predictions for the upcoming Grand Prix. And today, I will be previewing the Russian Grand Prix. Now, I'm recording this just after the Chinese GP has concluded, and I have to say before it starts, is Rosberg now the luckiest man alive? 2 races in a row, all his real challenges have been wiped out by turn 1. Anyway, let's start with Mercedes and Nico Rosberg, of course. Rosberg, he's on top form now, and he's 36 points clear in the Drivers' Championship, and looks like he will win again. There is no reason to say why he won't win the Russian Grand Prix, because he was doing very well there last year as well, before of course he broke down. As for his teammate, Lewis Hamilton, he had a difficult Chinese Grand Prix weekend. So much bad luck came his way with the gearbox melting, and then also he's finally started to find out that the Mercedes isn't as reliable as we once thought, and reliability issues will start to creep in for Mercedes. Hopefully that doesn't happen again in Russia, but we'll have to wait and find out. Tyres won't be an issue in Russia like they were in China, as they spent almost half the race on the super soft tyres last year in Russia. Therefore, Mercedes cannot make the same mistakes they made in the previous races with Lewis Hamilton, and also in a sense Nico Rosberg on tyre strategies, and Mercedes should overall have a larger advantage here than they had over the rest of Russia. Next up is Ferrari. Ferrari could have had a great Chinese Grand Prix weekend if they weren't out of the running after turn 1 for the win, of course. Russia should be a little bit harder for them, given that the tyres won't be an issue for Mercedes. However, we should still expect Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Raikkonen to give it their all to at least challenge the Mercedes in qualifying and maybe at the start of the race. Next up is Red Bull. Red Bull were very strong at China. As I predicted, I did say they would go very well here, and they pretty much guaranteed that by getting a podium, of course, for Danny Kvyat. Russia, however, might be a little bit harder for them, as more power is required in Russia from what we've seen in the past than is required in China, so it is more of a power track which will not help the Red Bulls as much as it helps them in China. Danny Kvyat is on high going into his home race. This could help him, it could help him get that extra tenth or two that he needs to maybe be just as quick as Danny Ricciardo, and we could see a good battle at least between the 2 Red Bull drivers. Next up is Williams. Williams finally had a decent race and something for me to talk about. For the first 2 races, there was nothing for me to talk about with them. They were pretty disappointing, but we've got to say in China, Felipe Massa had a brilliant defensive drive to hold off Lewis Hamilton. And also, Russia should be a little bit better for Williams than China was. So we could expect Massa and Bottas to maybe even take the fight to the Red Bulls, which we all would like to see, because they should be a little bit closer given that it is more of a power track. Next up is Haas. Haas really struggled in China, and they could struggle again in Russia depending on the tyre pressures. It does seem that the tyre pressure does seem to affect the Haas car more than it does the others. Therefore, if they are high tyre pressures again, we could see the Haas really struggling. If tyre pressures are not an issue, we could see Haas possibly scoring some more points at the Russian Grand Prix. Next up is Toro Rosso. Now, Toro Rosso didn't do as well as I thought they would in China. I thought they would really be fighting the Red Bulls. But it wasn't to be, they did at least score some points, but it wasn't what we was expecting. I was expecting a little bit more from them, and Russia could be a little bit tougher than China was, because as I said before, Russia is more of a power track than China was. Next up is Force India. Now, Force India had another horrible Grand Prix in China, which was a shame because at one point it was looking really good for them. At one point it did look like that both cars could score some very good points. I admit that was after lap 4, after the safety car and everything, but at one point it was looking very good for them. But somehow both of them didn't score any points, which was extremely disappointing. However, if 2015 was anything to go by, this Russian Grand Prix could be very, very good for the Force India team, mainly for a certain Sergio Perez, of course. Last season, of course, he did score a podium. Let's hope that Force India can at least score points. I doubt they'll get a podium, but let's hope they can at least score some points in the Russian Grand Prix. Next up is McLaren. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I expected a little bit more from them in China, especially with them boasting about their chassis and everything. It did seem pretty good, but it wasn't good enough to score points. Somehow both Alonso and Button failed to score points, which was a shame and very surprising given that also at one point they were pretty high up the rankings as well. Now again, that was due to the safety car, but at one point it did actually look like they could score points. Button was in the points for a very long time, and it looked like McLaren could have got a good few points, but somehow they didn't score any points, and Russia should be a little bit tougher for McLaren than China was. That being said, Bahrain should have been tougher for McLaren than China was, and yet they did score points in Bahrain and they didn't in China, so who knows. Next up is Renault. Renault had another horrible performance, as was expected, but I didn't expect it to be that bad. I really did not expect someone like Jolyon Palmer to finish in last. Palmer finished behind the Saubers and the Manners, which for Renault surely is not acceptable. And why should they go any better here in Russia? You know, it's not looking good for Renault at the moment. They did say it's going to take a couple of years to get better, so these next couple of years are going to be very tough for Renault, but they do need to show some signs of improvement pretty quickly, otherwise things are not looking good at all. Next up is Manor. I said that they wouldn't be as strong in China as they were in Bahrain, and they did sort of prove me right, which again is good. But Russia should be better for them. Russia, as I've said already, is more of a power track than China was, so that should help Manor. I don't think they're going to score points, don't get me wrong, but we could see a better performance from Pascal Wehrlein, and hopefully Rio Haryanto also can do a little bit better. And we could see some better things from Manor at the Russian Grand Prix. And finally, Sauber. Will they even be at Russia yet? Who knows. China was difficult again. Apparently sometime soon they will be bringing some updates. Apparently. Hopefully that comes soon, and hopefully we can see Sauber at least do a little bit better than where they are currently, because it's not looking good for them at all. Now I'm going to be moving on to my predictions, and I'm going to start of course with qualifying, and I'm going to have to give pole position to Nico Rosberg. Now, Lewis Hamilton has seemed to be the fastest so far this season over one lap, but given last year's performance, who's to say Nico Rosberg won't score pole position here in Russia? I think he will. I think he's got that little bit of an edge over Hamilton in qualifying at Sochi, so I'm going to have to go with Nico Rosberg for pole position. As for the race, I think it's going to be pretty simple. I'm going to say Rosberg to win, Hamilton second, and Sebastian Vettel in third. I don't think Red Bull are going to be anywhere near those two teams, so it's going to be difficult for something different to what I just said to happen. And also, like I said, Mercedes should have a bigger advantage here in Russia than they had in China. So yeah, I've got to go with Rosberg to win, Hamilton second, Vettel in third, and the top midfield team will be Red Bull. But what do you guys think? Who do you think will score pole position, and who do you think will win the Russian Grand Prix? And of course, as always, comment, leave a like, and if you haven't already, of course, subscribe to my channel for more F1 content. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Sorry that this preview and predictions was a little bit shorter than usual, but I don't really have time to be making these longer videos right now, given university. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.